Captain Ron Nielsen, and this is Fearless Flight Live, our weekly Facebook show and simulcast on YouTube. And we'd like to welcome you all in. If you have an issue with flying, you're afraid to fly, or if you know somebody who's afraid to fly, this is the place to be. And sometimes people show up just because they like to talk about airplanes. I know one of the things when I was walking down the concourse. When I was still flying, you could see people coming at you, and and if they wanted to know something about a fare, ticket price or something, we were just the hugest disappointment. But Eric will back me up here. Yeah, lots of people just like to talk about airplanes, and that's fine with us. We do have the call-in feature, and Dieter has put the call-in information, the number in the notes there, and so. We really would like to have you join us tonight. I'm going to open it up we have a guest tonight, and welcome Paul Heyman. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Ron?
Hey, good. And of course, I've got Eric Larson with me and Dieter Staudinger, and our I always want to say token, but not in the sense that it's it's pejorative. Our esteemed flight attendant. How's that? Diane. So she's back this week. Last week she was playing hooky with her granddaughter, which is totally approved as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, we want to make.
Buddy.
What's that?
Granddaughter and old enough to be drinking buddy.
Oh, that's even a better combination there. So we want to say a quick shout out for our Facebook group, Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather. We that's continuing to grow, and if you've been in that, are you a member of that, Paul? Not to put you on the spot or anything like that, but
no, you know what? But I think I'll be joining after our meeting tonight.
Yeah, that was a subtle prod there, but yeah, it's just the more it was amazing, because when you're starting out with 200, 300 people, it's not a critical mass, and people are reluctant to go on there because they're too highlighted, and that I think that's the problem too right now with the call-in is people are intimidated by the fact that their voice is going to go out over the air. But we really encourage it as Paul and I get talking here in just a minute. If you got anything that comes up and you'd like to ask Paul, please we really encourage it as Paul and I get talking here in just a minute. If you've got anything that comes up and you'd like to ask Paul, please we really encourage it as Paul and I get talking here in just a minute. If you've got anything. That won't work.
Some feedback.
Does he sound funny to you guys? Because he sounds funny to me.
That won't work. Yeah, that was the feedback, and it's got the delay in it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that won't work.
Talking through a toilet paper tube is not one of our fearless flight coping strategies.
It's amazing, don't do that with 200, 300 people. Yeah, I'm totally gobsmacked. If you get an idea, Dieter, let me know. Because we never had that problem last week.
Punished for being on time. Oh man.
Okay, maybe I found it.
All right.
Okay, test 1, 2. How's it? I don't hear it now. Do you?
No,
you're good.
Okay, I think I solved it. And once again, it was operator error, but it was unintentional. Okay. All right. So we're back. All right. Well, we got everybody introduced. And so let's just bring Paul onto the scene here. So, geez, Paul, how the heck are you? And what's a nice guy like you doing in a place like this?
Well, I am very well, Captain Ron. I am here because I am a successful client of yours, two-time client in terms of just recently flew down to Charlotte, North Carolina from Connecticut, and then back up from Myrtle Beach, back up to Connecticut.
And was that business pleasure, or not that it's any of our business, but?
No, that's okay. It was pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And before that, how long had it been since you had flown? Before those, how long?
Yep. So it had been since COVID. I hadn't flown since around October of 2019.
Okay.
And we that's I think the first time we talked was back in
Yep.
in 2019. So yeah, so
Yep.
you were kind of another COVID victim,
Yep.
an indirect one, just due to the gap in flying there. And what is it? When you go to fly, tell us about the story. What bothers you? Where how do you know you're even afraid?
So this time was different than the last time, I think. Just the mind, as I know is a powerful thing. And my mind, I think, just started going to bad places. And I think for whatever reason, I started thinking about the airplane as almost like a roller coaster ride.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I was imagining, even though I tried to tell myself that wasn't the reality and that that wasn't going to happen. And so I couldn't shake that feeling. And then turbulence, as much as we've talked about it, still is one of those points that gets me, and take off a little bit too for whatever reason. Although I think I'm getting a little bit better with takeoff.
Okay, and you really represent the bulk of, no matter who I work with. It doesn't matter whether they get an emotional trigger, just thinking about the door closing, being trapped, or whether it's a mechanical one, thinking about some aspect of the flight going wrong. But the whole process, for no matter who it is, it's the thinking, And when you have a thought that unleashes in your brain there, and for you, turbulence is one of them. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, and when it starts, it's like it definitely is a compulsive thing, but it's not. I'm not saying to anybody that it's voluntary, because certainly, you're not sitting there saying, "Bring it on." I can't wait to get stuck in this mire here. But some of the things that I've tried to get people to try is, one is acknowledging the thought first. And I use the metaphor about don't think of a pink elephant, and because as soon as you try not to think of something, it just magnifies in there. So is that fair to say that that's what happens to you? You're a guy that, it's like you're very successful in life, right? And you use your thinker all the time to work with your clients and stuff like that. So it's kind of a bummer when you can't stop that thing when
it's definitely frustrating. And no, I think that was one of the lessons that I took away from our time together this time, was trying to acknowledge the anxiety, instead of telling myself like I have to get over this, or that this is not not rational, those kind of thoughts. I tried to say it's okay, this is just kind of the part of the way I'm wired, which definitely helped a little bit.
Yeah. So, I talked to people in terms of, did you have something to say, Eric? Or I know you popped up.
No, sorry. I went and grabbed my thermos while you guys were engrossed, hoping nobody would miss me. But then when I clattered back down here, it made racket.
made a grand entrance. Cool enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, but back to what you were talking about there is that, I was listening to some other people today talk about anxiety and obsessive thinking and things like that. And they talk about toxic thoughts. Here's another example, not necessarily not related to flying, but like, you're married, right, Paul?
I am.
And if you've probably had that experience where your wife and you will be talking, or maybe your parting company or something like that, and she will give you a look, and she doesn't have to say anything, and it may not even have been intentional, right? She may have been completely thinking something else, but all it took was that look. And it's the same process, right? Now in your mind, it's like, oh, geez, what did I do? Or, what's gotten into her or something like that. And I was listening to people talk about that today. And I thought, it's not just unique to flying. That's the process that all of us go through. And so it leads to, negative feelings, no matter what it is. But when it's in the case of anxiety due to flying, it pretty much, you're screwed because it's hard to stop that. So what did you, when you were thinking about flying, when you had your, the trip coming up, the days before, was it, that we talked that I don't remember how close we got to the flight and all that, but, what was that like leading up to it? What were you able to find some success in some things?
We talked only a few days before my flight. So, I'm going to tell you that, before we talked, it was definitely challenging. There was probably, lost some sleep, had many times where, my thoughts wandered, to a, it's, the frustrating part, I think, is that it takes a little bit away from your trip, because instead of being excited, all you're thinking about is the airplane ride. Which is frustrating.
And I had I was going to say, I had another client this week who was supposed to fly on Wednesday, and he was returning to the West Coast from the up New York State, and he just couldn't stop, and he ended up walking off the airplane. And the good news was we talked, and he was able to get through it the next time, and he made it on Friday. Wasn't as much fun, but it wasn't as bad as it was when he left it. And I hope I never have minimized with people just how real it is. There's nothing, there's nothing weak about people that have that anxiety. In fact, I think it's the opposite. They have a really strong intellect, and it works in so many areas of their lives. Like you, I mean, the number of people I have that are successful in their own lives using their minds is far more than people. I always joke with people, the trouble is we got to dumb you down a little bit, because you just got to be able to put some of that stuff off to the side. So anyway, when you got on the airplane, what was it like the day you flew? Does it pop up again? Did it what happened to it that day?
Yeah, so I flew to North Carolina from Connecticut by myself. So I did not have any family with me. And one of the things that you and I have talked about is find a person on the airplane, preferably sitting next to you, that you can talk to. And I was lucky enough to have somebody sitting next to me that I could engage with. It wasn't like a super long conversation, but, here and there, we were able to talk and engage, which was definitely good. And then, the other piece, which has just been, I can't say enough about the harmonizer and even the takeoff video. I didn't need the turbulence video, luckily, because we didn't really hit a lot of turbulence. Even though actually when I talked to the pilots, they did say that we might encounter some, but we did not. So I think those couple things were a lot of help and, helped me have a successful flight.
Yeah, so you did talk to the pilots, which
I did.
I really recommend, and then have a conversation. And to me, the word I've been using more with people is just trying to find a way to normalize the experience. And so, like you said, it doesn't really matter whether you have a long, in-depth conversation with somebody next to you. It's just the fact that you're normalizing the experience a little bit by not being all locked up, focused completely inwardly and shutting out the rest of the world. So anyway, and were there peaks and valleys? Did you just kind of rise and then you settle down, or what was it like?
Talking about on the flight down?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really, I think that, once we got up in the air and kind of reached that, cruising altitude, again, I listened to the harmonizer, and I think once I got comfortable, got a little Wi-Fi on, so I put on, it was American Airlines, and they allowed us to have some entertainment, which is always a good distraction for me. Once I, was able to get that, get comfortable and get that distraction, it just kind of felt like a little bit like I was sitting in my living room, and just was able to relax and really get comfortable, and and then you start having these thoughts to yourself like, what was I even worried about?
Right. And again, that just points out that it's the anticipatory anxiety that freaks people out. It's the lead up. And and a lot of it happens even before you ever get on the airplane or to the airport. So if you can get through that, like whether it's the harmonizer, whether it's writing with your non-dominant hand or whatever, if you can get through that first few minutes on the flight, most people have a similar experience to what you're reporting, and that is I'm now at a point where I can do some of the other things. They will work, like watching the entertainment system. And just a footnote for everybody out there, if you haven't flown in a while or you're not familiar with the airlines now, most of the airlines, I know United, American, Delta, Southwest, they all have their own app. You have to download the app to your mobile device, pardon me, before you get on the airplane. If you get on the airplane, you can't use their Wi-Fi to get on to their Wi-Fi. Okay. So that, if you have any questions, send us an email or something like that, or come on the air. If anybody out there, by the way, has a question for Paul, or you just want to add something out here, we're there. So get the number and give us a call. But the main thing is to get that app on there. And now it's just really effortless. It's, when they first came out with that a couple of years ago, I'm not the smartest or the brightest bulb in the pack either, and I had trouble figuring it out. But it's so effortless to get on there. I know I just flew back from Hawaii last night. Do you have any things, Dieter? Anybody? Any questions that are out there that?
Actually, Paul, I'm gonna direct that question to you. We recently had Steffi and her son on, and she just listened to you, and she has a flight coming up on Thursday, and she's feeling all that anxiety rise. So just from your experience and how you just went through this, what could you share that helped you and may help her?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would definitely, one of the things that I wished I had done before my flight, something that I think Captain Ron and I talked about a couple of years ago, was listening to the harmonizer, a little bit each day, whether it's at night. He had recommended that, when you start to have those thoughts and you feel anxious, it's really, God, I mean, they talk about not listening to it while you're driving. Got to make sure you do that. But just listening to that, I find it so calming. And I can, even being back and being on the ground, sometimes, the harmonizer, comes into my mind, and I think about, some of the messages and some of the things, and I can't emphasize enough, how great that tool is. And I think it's just kind of, some of the acknowledgement stuff too, that Captain Brown's talked about, in terms of like, just, not beating yourself up and not making this like it's, something that's a stigma, but just saying, hey, this is part of who I am. And that's kind of what I tried to do too, is try to acknowledge that this is not, something that I should feel bad about. It's just kind of part of who I am, and just need to acknowledge that and find a way to, get through and make this as good an experience as I can do. And I think that if she does that, I think that she'll be in a good spot for Thursday.
Yeah. And when you say, it's just part of who I am, that's really key, because what happens when we have anxious thoughts like that, it takes over our being, but it's not all who we are. And that's why, some of the times I'll do in coaching, I'll have people, tell me what their triggers are, things like that. And then I'll just say, okay, I want you to curl the toes on your left foot. Or I want you to, to imagine, you have an itch in the middle of the right side of your back or something like that, and just help people realize that we are really complex. And even though we have a dominant thought that we might be obsessing over, we can process two things at once. And it helps to me, it helps bring it to the forefront that I have these thoughts right now, but that's not all of who I am. and and you keep moving. The harmonizer, basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's an audio program that I put together. I have a video version of it too, which has the same soundtrack, but just some captioning on the screen. But most people use the audio program, which is very powerful for people who are getting tripped out by anxiety. And it has multi-evocation. That means there's multiple voice tracks talking, sometimes very close proximity to each other, sometimes with a little delay in them, combined with sound effects off the airplane. And literally, I have a soundtrack that's just a flight that goes along with it. So in the background, in your unconscious, you're listening to what the sound would be like in the flight. But I still recommend that you use noise canceling earphones or earbuds to listen to it, so that you can just focus on the soundtrack there. And then we alternate the sound at times from one hemisphere or one side of to the other, using just basic stereo. But it creates what's called bilateral stimulation, and that's a phenomenon that they noticed when they began studying, when psychologists began studying REM sleep in people and the way the brain replenishes itself at night. And so you've got all those things working together in there, and as Paul said, it has a distracting quality to it, and at the same time there are parts that people will get involved in. It's kind of chronological. It goes through the takeoff and and into flight and turbulence and cruise and the landing and all that. So it has a flow to it. It's 32 minutes. And as Paul mentioned, I recommend when you get within, depending on the level of your anxiety, when you get within 2 to 4 weeks of your flight, start listening to it every night at bedtime, all the way through 32 minutes. In the morning, listen to it in its entirety for 32 minutes. And then during the day, even more importantly, is when you notice your anxiety is starting to kick in over, it doesn't matter what it gets, what triggers it, but listen to it. And you don't have to listen to the whole 32 minutes, just long enough until you notice that your attention is starting to come back under your control. That's the key. And it's kind of like doing reps with weights. You're really trying to strengthen your mind and particularly your attention, because a fearful flyer, if nothing else, is someone who has an attention disorder. You just lose control of where your thoughts go. And when they take off, they take every bit of your rational mind with them. So anyway, anything to add to that, Paul, on as far as the harmonizer?
Not really. I just, it's knowing that I have that in my back pocket has made my last probably 3 or 5 or 6 flights just, it gives me confidence.
Okay. And that's the thing that I tell people is you don't have to get over your fear of flying, and you're not likely to get over it by the next time you fly. But what you do need is the confidence that you will be able to manage it. And that sounds exactly what you're describing. You get to the point
100%.
Okay, I may not be where I want to be completely, but I'm not where I was before. And that's the best part. I'm just going to talk about a couple things. I had a trip. Stay with us if you want, Paul. And I had a trip went out to Hawaii about a week ago, and had a great flight. I've coached. I've probably coached 30 people in the last 2 months that have been trying to go to Hawaii. And so it was kind of like seeing if it was really as good as I thought it could be. And it was. Bless your hearts out there, all of you who hate turbulence. Mine was like glass the whole way over and the whole way back. Sorry about that, but I think I stole all the smooth air on you. But anyway, it was a great trip, and coming back, we had a Max for those of you, and I took a couple of pictures there. We wanted to not terrorize you, but just talk about the things that made the Max, or gave it such a bad reputation there. If Dieter can work those slides in there. So I walked up to the gate there, and I couldn't tell originally because it's just a little bit longer than a regular 800, and but a couple of things about it. The first thing I noticed was that up on the back there, you can see just above the numbers there, and I got a close up on the next slide. Remember, if you remember when Dieter, oh, I'm sorry, that was in the seat back. So that was the first indication I had once I got on the airplane that I was on a MAX, because you have the safety information card that has it printed right across it there. But other than that, there really wasn't much notice. And you all remember when we're talking about ETOPS, remember extended twin operation procedures? Eric and I have spent a lot of time about talking about how we safely fly over water. I noticed there, I always knew that they had put it on the nose landing gear door, but they actually paid it up there with the certificate number up on the back of the airplane now. And just to show you, that's how diligent it is, so that, you know, God help the pilots if they didn't know that they were on an ETOPS qualified airplane. But if you have any trouble, it's painted right on the side of the airplane there. And they do that for the backup and for safety that goes into the rest of aviation, so that when people are working around these airplanes like that, they know the differences and they know what they're looking for, and doing that. And then the other thing I did was the thing that caused the accidents or played into the accidents was a system that was tied into the autopilot based on two sensors up on the nose. And I have the next slide, it's a little closer, it's still not, you can see those arrows, those were the villains. And in the original accidents, they had only put, Boeing had produced that airplane as standard equipment, just one of those sensors. And so that was part of the original problem, in that there was not another system that was measuring and they were comparing, which is very typical. And that was part of the process. I'm not going to go into it, but it was the part of the airplane that was flawed was the process of approving it, the certification process, and that was part of it. And so now one of the fixes was they have to have not only one but two of those systems on every airplane. And it was like, you know, kind of like a used car deal, you know, oh, you want wheels with your car. It was an option before, where the airlines had to pay for it and order it special. Now it's automatic equipment on that. Anything else, Eric, that you can think about?
And that's everything you said is correct. Dieter I haven't been paying him enough bribes, and he's dumbed my video down. I can't start it, but that's okay. I got a face bill for radio anyway. So what Ron says is exactly right. All the airplanes had those two systems on them to start with. However, both of them were not feeding into that maneuvering characteristic augmentation system. So if one of them got a signal, boy, the airplane would start reacting to it. And now both of them have to have a signal for that system to operate. And if one of them is failed and the other one gives a bad signal, the maneuvering characteristic system won't engage. It has to be a what we call a two-channel deal. And the engineers also considerably dumbed down the authority of the MCAS system, so it won't take the airplane and the people for the wild ride that it did before. It can't. So
dumbing down the authority, what Eric means is that before, when the autopilot would intervene, if it sensed an issue where it was called upon to make an input to the flight control, it made the elevator in the back go up and down, but a lot larger travel. And so what they did is they dampened that out so that now it only travels a little bit. So you don't get that massive pitch up like they had and pitch down like they had before. So lots of changes. And I know many of you were still asking me, in February of this year when I think United was the first one to put it back into service, saying, should I get on a MAX? And my philosophy has always been that's the safest one in the air, because let me tell you, but Boeing, they're really looking at serious problems in their survivability if they didn't get this worked out here. So, and from a pilot's point of view, oh my gosh, what a piece of equipment that is. We took off, so we had only 6 empty seats, and full of gas coming back to the West Coast, or back to Phoenix. Oh my God. I mean, that thing took off like a scalded rabbit or dog, or whatever the term is there. Diane?
I flew on a MAX quite a few months ago, and
yeah,
I had the same situation. It was perfect, wonderful, great flight and smooth. And I certainly didn't have any concerns about being on a MAX again. So
yeah, full disclosure, Southwest does not have them configured with the little USB ports in the seats. So, so if you're like me, you take plenty of battery power for all your gadgets and stuff. They do have Wi-Fi and entertainment like all the other major carriers, but they do not have the little USB things. And I kind of got spoiled riding on American and Delta because they got them all over the place, and you can plug them in and make them work there. So
one thing I want to just throw in from the flight attendant corner
Sure.
is that the mask mandate for flying has been extended. It was originally scheduled to cease the middle of September, but now it's extended to January the 18th. So that takes us through the holiday period, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. So, and everyone out there, if you're planning on flying at all during the holidays to see family, friends, and whatever, just make sure you have your masks. And also just another, and we've talked about this before, make sure when you book tickets, particularly during holiday time, to give yourself enough time if you have connecting flights. I know a lot of people, when they book their tickets, they are looking for the least costly fare, and that's certainly reasonable. We understand that. But a lot of times the least costly fare will be a connection of 30, 45 minutes. And I kind of do this for a living. And if I were on a connecting flight as a passenger, I wouldn't book anything with less than almost a 2-hour connecting time. You can always find something to do in an airport, but it's better to be there 2 hours longer than 1 minute late, because when we close the door, we are not opening the door back up. I'm just
and I think most of the airlines, they have built in the system if you're booking from A to B and you got to go through there, but you can bypass that and mistakes. And the main thing is especially over the holidays when it's really important to get there.
Weather affects it too. I mean, this is monsoon season. You experienced that last night. And we, part of our briefing, when the flight attendants and the pilots get together and we have our briefing, they always discuss what our alternate airport is if the weather is bad. And so, you can be headed. We were headed once to San Luis Obispo and wound up in Los Angeles overnight. So
speaking of that, you should have been with me last night.
That's what I was saying. That's what you were saying.
On time, coming out of Honolulu, and I mean smooth as glass all the way in. I could tell when we came over the West Coast, I could see the lights on the ground there. And as we got a little closer, even within 15 minutes of Phoenix, we had virtually no turbulence or anything like that. And we started to let down, and I had this sense that we were slowing prematurely, and we're only 15 minutes from the scheduled landing, and you can see it right on the flight display where you're at and all that. Sure enough, the guy slowed up, and then we made a turn away from Phoenix, and I thought, that's probably not a great sign. And sure enough, they any of you who were in the Phoenix area last night, you just got hammered. I came home and half of my trees have been pruned by the weather last night. But what had happened, it was they had 80-mile-an-hour winds at the airport. They actually shut the airplane down, or shut the arrivals down, or the airport arrivals and departures, and the pilots came out. And from a pilot's point of view, that's a no-brainer. I don't have to make any decisions with that. When they close the airport, you're going to your alternate, and we had Vegas as an alternate, and they just came on. The PA did a really nice job of alerting everybody what was going on, and said we're going to Phoenix, and then they still got a couple of the obligatory questions from passengers. Well, what does it mean with that? And they said, he came on again. He said, here's the deal. We're going to Vegas, we're going to land, and we're going to get some more gas. And he said, now you know everything that I know. And that was it. And that was it. People were just absolutely happy as pigs in the mud after that. We got up there, we landed, and they got off, got a new release. We got a little bit of gas, and we were back in the air about an hour, I suppose, all told. And, got here at 2:00 in the morning, which wasn't all that much fun, but it was totally safe. Totally not a big deal, and nobody was complaining. Everybody was happy campers there. So anyway,
if this isn't our wettest, people who live in Phoenix, if this isn't our wettest monsoon on record ever, I'll be stunned. Just an immense amount of water.
This is really something.
I have a quick question.
Okay, go.
That's from the comments for you, actually, Diane. Don is asking, thinking about maybe volunteering at an airport. And I know that I don't know, we've not really often enough mentioned that you have volunteered as a navigator in Phoenix. So if you could just quickly give us your perspective on how that could help a fearful flyer, and
Oh.
is it fun?
Sure. Oh, it's great fun. Oh, that's really nice, a great question. And we're really pleased that you're interested. Yes, I have actually volunteered at Sky Harbor for 16 and a half years. Almost 8,000 hours of volunteer service there. Our program has around 400 individuals right now. Because of COVID, our program had been suspended for a little over a year, and we've just started back up now in August. The city is the entity that sponsors our program, the city of Phoenix. And right now there are no plans for new classes. Should that change when the city is more comfortable and the program needs to be ramped up a little bit, then if you go on to Phoenix Sky Harbor, our website, and you scroll down and go through the menu to the volunteer service, then there'll be more information on the Navigator program. So
Don would have to fly there because I think he's in Virginia.
He's in
So there
Virginia?
may not be.
Well, you know,
part of-
that's in general, not very many airports have volunteer programs.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
But, you know, and we're in Virginia, I mean, it could be the DC part of Virginia or Richmond or wherever. But certainly to inquire to all of the airports, they're always going to have their own website to go through there and see if there is a volunteer program that's available in your locale at your home airport.
Great exposure therapy.
Exactly. And it goes back to knowledge is power, and understanding how airports work and how the ticketing works and the baggage claim works. The more you understand those kind of simple ideas, the more you get the bigger picture of how not everybody's doing it, but how all of the different pieces come together in the puzzle that makes it all work for air travel. And
Yeah, it definitely falls
really
in the category of exposure. And Diane can tell you, you know, you have much wider access to the facilities at the airport, and it's operating unconsciously, so it probably helps. And if your airport doesn't have a program, maybe you can be the one that starts it.
Start it, sure.
Yeah,
Diane,
Diane
how do you
I'll go
find
help.
that out?
I'll fly there and help you start it.
You call the city, you look at the city government pages and call the airport operations manager, that kind of phone number. Is that how you would find that out?
They probably have an outreach program.
Yeah. Most of them, right? You can do that. I would always start with the web pages for the individual airport, because I don't want to even say it's the larger airports. A lot of really large airports don't have any program whatsoever.
No.
And some of the real small ones do. So it's a function of looking into it. Another thing that we do have at Phoenix and several other airports, I don't know if you have a dog, but there are programs at airports where there are not assist animals, but visiting animals, dogs, that help alleviate stress for the traveling public and the employees. And if you like doing that sort of thing, that might be an avenue for you to But
hugely popular. You can always find the dog in the airport, man, because it's just a crowd all over the dog, and the dogs are just adorable.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Paul, any last comments, words of wisdom to everybody or anybody out there?
I just think that what you said was right on point before about the anticipation of the flight being a lot worse than the flight itself. So I think that anybody out there who's watching and who has some of the same fears that I have, that if you can just put to use some of the tools that Captain Ron and his team have available, and get yourself on the airplane, it will not be as bad as you think it is.
Famous last words of one of my favorite people. He just said, "Sooner or later, you got to get on a damn airplane." I mean, that's the only way to get over it. And we first met through a 15-minute coaching call, right? So you never know what's going to happen after that. So anyway,
absolutely.
So Everybody out there, thanks, Paul. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you,
and-
Paul,
and
very
talking.
much.
Yeah, thanks,
problem.
Diane, Eric, and Dieter.
I
And,
gotta get us out of this liability trouble. Both Paul and Ron were talking about the harmonizer, which is extremely effective. And a lot of the fearful flyers have even worn that to the dentist and they think it's fabulous. However, do not let the dentist try out the harmonizer while he's working on you. That's not a good idea.
You
Just
have
keep
to
it on
buy
your
the
own
warning.
head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do not operate heavy equipment. So, anyway.
No.
Okay. Hey, everybody, thanks again. Last time, Paul, thanks a lot for coming on tonight.
Yeah,
And
thank
you.
all of you out there, we're looking forward to seeing you again next week for Fearless Flight Live. Thanks a lot and have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.